Hello, dear friends and participants. You are welcome to the present talk of mine on ethnography in the digital world, doing ethnography in the digital world. So, in the previous session, we have seen the principles of digital ethnography. Um, So in the present session, we will see the theoretical frameworks um, uh, provided by Professor Shara Pink and her team of others published in their book called Digital Ethnography. So based on that book, we will uh, uh, see how these theoretical frameworks suggested by them are useful and one after one, we will study those theoretical frameworks. After that, in that process, we will also see some other books and what they have to say on digital ethnography. Let me share my screen with you. Doing ethnography in a digital world. This program is sponsored by International Institute of Anthropological Applications, which is a virtual institute created by Anthropological Association for Humankind. You can visit this website, aafh.in. We have also created Anthropological Association for Humankind, a YouTube channel where you can find all the recordings of these digital ethnography related sessions. So if you miss this session at this point of time, so you can go to that YouTube channel of Anthropological Association for Humankind and listen to those video recordings. That should be fine. And we are also going to put some assessment tests on the sessions, and so that to understand your grasp of the concepts and whatever the training course that you are undergoing. So, and at the end, we are also going to send you to the field sites, digital ethnography field sites to undertake digital ethnography. So. So, yeah, ethnography is establishing rapport, selecting informants, transcribing text, and taking genealogies, mapping fields, keeping a diary, and so on. But it is not these things, techniques, and received procedures that define the enterprise. What defines it is the kind of intellectual effort it is, an elaborate venture in, to borrow a notion from Gilbert Ryle, the thick description. In the social sciences and related fields, in the social sciences and the related fields, a thick description is a description of um, a, a thick description is a description of human social action that describes not just physical behaviors, but their context as interpreted by the actors as well, so that it can be better understood by an outsider. A thick description typically adds a record of subjective explanations and meanings provided by the people engaged in the behaviors, making the collected data of greater value for studies by other social scientists. The term was first introduced by um, 20th century philosopher Gilbert Ryle. However, the predominant sense in which it is used today was developed by anthropologist Clifford Geertz in his book, The Interpretation of Cultures, published in 1973, to characterize his own method of doing ethnography. In the book, The Routledge Companion to Digital Ethnography, the authors begins their book with these few sentences. With the increase of digital network media in everyday life, researchers have increasingly turned their gaze to the symbolic and the cultural elements of technologies. Researchers have increasingly turned their gaze to the symbolic and cultural elements of technologies, from studying online game communities, locative and social media, to YouTube and social mobile media, and ethnographic approaches to digital and networked media have helped to elucidate the dynamic cultural and social dimensions of media practice. This is one of the textbooks that we have prescribed. It's a very interesting compilation of articles are there. Christine Hein, she wrote a book called, titled The Ethnography for the Internet, Embedded, Embodied, and Everyday. In her book, she raises beautiful questions. Christian Hein, the author of Ethnography for the Internet, writes that ethnography is prized as a method for getting to the heart of meaning and enabling us to understand in the round and in depth how people make sense of their lives. It certainly promises then to give us a way to get to grips with some recurrent and topical questions. Has the internet changed our lives? Has it fundamentally changed us? Has it leveled the playing field of social inequality, or have new forms of privilege emerged? So she goes on asking the right questions. Are we conforming more or less to social norms in the age of the internet? Has the internet strengthened, enriched, or challenged our sense of community? Has the internet has the internet engendered new forms of identity, or enabled us to better be ourselves? Let me repeat this question. Has the internet engendered new forms of identity, or enabled us to better be ourselves? How lives are lived, how technologies are adopted in the sense accepted, approved, and adapted or changed to our lives. How social structures are made seems a promising way to capture what is distinctive about our contemporary way of life. What is distinctive about our contemporary way of life, and what is enduring about the challenges we face and our means of coping with them? These are the important questions raised by Christine Hein, a digital anthropologist and a digital ethnographer who had around 25 years or 30 years of experience in this field. So, yeah. So why I quote from her and her questions? It is a very meaningful questions in this context of doing a digital ethnography or undertaking ethnography in a digital world. So what are the theoretical frameworks to study digital world? This is the question that guides us all through this presentation. So in the book, Digital Ethnography, the Principles and Practice, written by a bunch of authors, Shara Pink Heather Host, John Postel, Larissa Hijot, Tanya Lewis, and Joe Tachi. They're all the others, the accomplished others. So they prescribe a framework to undertake digital ethnography. They prescribe 7 key concepts in social and cultural theory, which can be used for the design and analysis of ethnographic research. These concepts were selected to represent a range of different routes to approaching the social world. Framework for doing digital ethnography. Digital ethnography outlines an approach to doing ethnography in a contemporary world. It invites researchers to consider how we live and research in a digital, material, and sensory environment. This is not a static world or environment. Rather, it is one of which we need to know how to research in it as it develops and changes. Digital ethnography also explores the consequences of the presence of digital media in shaping the techniques and processes through which we practice ethnography, and accounts for how the digital, methodological, practical, and theoretical dimensions of ethnographic research are increasingly intertwined. This content is taken from the book of digital ethnography and principles and practice. Yes, digital becomes increasingly entwined within everyday life. Ethnography's value as a key methodological and analytical approach to understand the ways in which digital media technologies are changing how we live, work, and play has increased. Shara Pink and et al. Published in 2016. Yeah, the framework consists of 7 concepts. So number 1, experiences, what people feel, and practices, what people do, and things, the objects that are part of our lives, relationships, our intimate social environments, social worlds, the groups and the wider social configurations through which people relate to each other. Localities, the actual physically shared contexts that we inhabit. Events, the coming together of diverse things in public context. So, yeah, these are the 7 concepts, theoretical, the frameworks they proposed. So, digital ethnographers, they research on experiences and practices and things and relationships, social worlds, localities, and events. All these concepts have already been part of social sciences and humanities research for a long time. And in fact, they remain at the core of our business as academics. Yet, existing theoretical concepts have often been configured in ways that have responded to the specificity of the social, cultural, and material forms that they have been used to understand these 7 concepts. So the authors of this book, Digital Ethnography, Principles and Practice, argue that the 7 concepts that we have chosen, they have chosen to explore in this book can all be used effectively to understand and research in digital environments, but that they need sometimes to be more finely honed for such works. They propose that the concepts can also be reshaped in response to the ways in which we encounter digital worlds ethnographically. They also stressed that the concepts which they have chosen are not the only ones that might be engaged or re-engaged or invented to be used in a dialogue with the digital ethnography practice. Their wider argument is that for a number of reasons, contemporary ethnography needs to be, as Hein has put it, adaptive. The reasons for using adaptive methods vary. They can be a response to time limitations, the distributed nature of field sites, the nature of the analytical units, or the interdisciplinary foci they take. Yet, they contend that they also need to use adaptive concepts precisely because digital ethnography is not just a method or part of a toolkit. Rather, digital ethnography is also always engaged in building and developing theory. Researching on experiences. Early definitions such as of John Dewey's understanding of experience as the flow of experience, as the flow of everyday life, punctuated by moments of fulfillment. So John Dewey is a noted philosopher, and his conception of experience is that the flow of everyday life punctuated by moments of fulfillment. Another philosopher, Husserl, focus on consciousness. His focus of his explanation on experience focuses on consciousness. Whereas Heidegger exploration of the experience as fundamentally connected to situated way of being in the world, situated way of being in the world. These are very famous philosophers. Merleau-Ponty's emphasis on the body as the site of our knowledge of the world are notable examples of how the study of experience has played a fundamental role in expanding our understanding of the human condition. So John Dewey says it is a flow of everyday life. Experience is the flow of everyday life punctuated by moments of fulfillment. Whereas Husserl's focuses on the consciousness, human consciousness, experience as a consciousness. Heidegger's exploration of experience as fundamentally connected to situated ways of being in the world. Ways of being in the world, situated ways of being in the world. So scholars across different ethnographically oriented disciplines have interrogated the concept of experience. And it has often been claimed that experience is at the center of ethnographic practice. Recently, work on the multidimensional aspects of the digital screen, concluding people's affective and haptic touch based and audiovisual experiences has emphasized the experiential qualities of digital media. Hello, am I audible to you?
Yes, doctor, you are audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Thank you. We are looking at experience as a theoretical concept framework. In the 7 concepts they have prescribed as a theoretical framework to undertake ethnographic research. So in this noted book, Digital Ethnography by Shara Pink and her team of co-authors. So yeah, we are trying to understand the conception of experiences in human human condition, to understand, to describe, to explain, to interpret, and to analyze to write about the human cultures, experience as a theoretical framework, the concept, how it is useful in mapping their meanings and their seeking behavior and their worldview, and how we have to discover their core conceptions of explaining their life. So how this concept of experience gives clues to us, and how it is useful for us to understand in the digital world what the human condition, their adaptations, their acceptances, their rejections, their changes, and all those things to configure the ongoing cultural change, to understand their feelings, their emotions. We have already seen the competency framework, human competency framework, to discover the human worldview. So in that, we have seen um, affective domain, uh, evaluative domain, and cognitive domain. So in the affective domain, these experiences, feelings, their hates, likes, and their manners and all these things comes in this domain. So these experiences as a conception that comes under affective domain of the worldview, as suggested by, as prescribed by my presentation in that human competencies framework is the conception developed by myself, and to discover the human worldviews. So in that, the affective domain talks about these human emotions, their feelings, their experiences, their taste, their aesthetics, and all those stuff. So yeah, now we see you see here this it has been there already in the social sciences as a theoretical concept to understand human condition. Yeah, scholars across different ethnographically oriented disciplines have interrogated the concept of experience. And it has often been acclaimed that experience is at the center of ethnographic practice. Recently, work on the multidimensional aspects of the digital screen, including people's affective and haptic touch based and audiovisual experiences, has emphasized the experiential qualities of the digital media. Defining experience. First, we deploy experience. First, we use experience as an analytical window through which to understand experiences of a world of which digital media are a part. So here is a window to see the outer world. So we come from a different world. We are going to enter the digital world, and in which the digital media is a part of it. So experience is used as a analytical window through which to understand experiences of a world of which digital media are a part. Second, we explore how the experience of digital technologies is part of the research process, considering how experience can be mobilized as a particular way of knowing other people's worlds through a digital ethnography approach. So this is important. We explore how the experience of digital technologies is part of the research process, considering how experience can be mobilized as a particular way of knowing other people's worlds through a digital ethnographic approach. Because research into experience is extensive and interdisciplinary, we concentrate on sensory experience in order to show how different kinds of experience might be researched. As Michael Serras highlights, the senses permit the experience of things. that are difficult or impossible to express through language, and which cannot be observed directly. One of the challenges of studying experience is that experience is often difficult to articulate. And so attempts to understand and interpret its meaning and significance rely on the ethnographer's immersion in the sites of other people's experiences. It also depends on identifying concepts associated with sensory or emotional experiences that facilitate the discussion of experience with research participants and academics. Yeah. Understanding other people's experience and articulating their feelings, their emotions, and all these things. Oh, again, this says this meeting will end in 10 minutes. Oh, this is very inconvenient. Oh. Ethnographers who have researched sensory experiences have taken two different approaches. The first approach focuses on the five senses as they are understood in Western traditions: sight, hearing, touch, smell, taste. These are the five senses they used, and their interrelationships. This approach, which focuses on the senses as a cultural phenomenon, is advocated by David House and Constance Klassen. They argue that earlier ethnographies of experience also sought to uncover sensory arrangements that are different from those to which the ethnographer is accustomed. For instance, Walter J. Ong argued that cultures can be understood in and through the organization of the sensorium. For instance, Walter J. Ong argued that cultures can be understood in and through the organization of the sensorium, the operationalization of our sensory apparatus, precisely because it makes culture. If one can understand the sensorium, one can understand culture. Wow, this is an amazing statement. The second approach, which builds on the work of the anthropologist Tim Ingold, invites us to consider experience as something that might not necessarily fit into verbal categories of expression, such as those used to describe the five senses noted above, and emphasizes that neuroscientists do not necessarily see sensory experience as mappable unto these five concepts as sensory channels between the body and brain. Sarah Pink has built on this approach to argue that phenomenological and neurological theories of sensory perception can enhance our ethnographic studies of the senses. Research that attends to the senses often takes into account the unspoken layers of sensory experience that are expressed through cultural categories. For instance, Paul Stoller's earlier work on sensuous scholarship focused on experience in the world. It fused what Stoller referred to as the intelligible, that is the scholarly, and the sensible, that is the sensory, in scholarly practice in ways that are parallel to the focus on embodiment discussed above. Stoller demonstrates how sensory immersion in culture produces. Stoller demonstrates how sensory immersion in a culture produces profound insights and understandings. For example, this work enabled him to experience and think about the senses in ways that were different from conventional modern Western assumptions. Stoller described how, after long spells of research among the Songhai people whom he worked with in Niger, he began to let the insights, he began saying, quoting from his book, let the sights, sounds, smells, and tastes of Niger flow into me. This fundamental rule in epistemological humility taught me that taste, smell, and hearing are often more important for the Sanghay than sight. The privileged sense of the West. In Shanghai, one can taste kinship. In Shanghai, one can taste kinship, smell witches, and hear the ancestors. Stoller brings this approach into his ethnographic writing by moving between different ways of writing to bringing scholarly discussion that is the intelligible and together with mere and evocative sensory narratives, the sensible in the same text. For sensory approaches are gaining in currency in part due to the ways in which the digital is increasingly entangled in everyday experience. This in turn fosters increased theoretical interest in the senses that in the everyday digital technologies, infrastructures and activities and the part of that are the part of the world we research and live within. Let me repeat this. Sensory approaches are gaining in currency in part due to the ways in which the digital is increasingly entangled in everyday experience. This in turn fosters increased theoretical interest in the senses and in everyday digital technologies, infrastructures and activities that are part of the worlds we research and live within. Digital media are increasingly interwoven in our media and communication environments and make possible the production of new and changed context, modes of circulation and forms of connection. Yet, as the examples we outlined below demonstrate, this is happening to different degrees in different ways through different technologies and platforms in different contexts. So these are the implications of the digital media and technologies for researching experience. One implication of these, the increasing and varied entanglement with the digital media is that we need to attend to the digital technologies and devices that are part of our sensory embodied experience of the environment. As the media scholar Ingrid Richardson points out, in an environment of multiplying handsets and frequently upgraded portable game consoles, it is salient to examine the perceptual specificity of our interactions with and experiences of such devices. At the same time, the emergence of new digital platforms has made lived experience possible in new ways. Research into these new modes of lived experience include studies of immersion in virtual worlds and gaming, and the experience of moving across online and offline worlds. There are growing number of ethnographic studies that have attended to embodied and sensory experience of new devices, media, and content. For example, work on haptic technologies by Peterson, Pink et al., and sound, noise, and silence, and there are, let me repeat, there are a growing number of ethnographic studies that have attended to embodied and sensory experience of new devices, media, and content. For example, work on haptic technologies, sound, noise, and silence, and the visual, such as through camera phone studies, has demonstrated the importance of both attending to both other peoples and ethnographers' own embodied and sensory experiences of and engagements with the new media. Work in disability studies and related fields has drawn attention to the particular capabilities of digital media to enhance, augment, and replace prior capabilities, such as Miller's discussion of a housebound man in Trinidad living in Facebook, or Ginberg